Okay, hello. So I have Nafisa here with me today. She's one of our 2021 emerging thought leaders in conflict and security cluster. Since WIIS Canada Spring Conference was canceled due to the pandemic, Nafisa is here to talk about her amazing research and tell her about her research project and future steps, so on and so forth. So to begin, Nafisa, tell me a little bit about yourself, your institutional affiliation, and your previous and probably current research interests.
Yeah. My name is Nafisa. I did my Bachelor of Arts honors and my Master's of Arts in Political Science at the University of Alberta. And then right now I'm in my fourth year of my PhD at Dalhousie University. My biggest research baby is my dissertation, and it focuses on civilian protection by the African Union in African countries. And so I look specifically at how the African Union as a regional organization has carried out civilian protection missions. And my main case study is Somalia. And so for me, civilian protection is important because I think of it as a multi-tiered approach. It starts with the international human rights law, and then it can trickle down into either regional, sorry about that, regional bodies, and then also mission specific kind of documents and mandates. But if you look at what civilian protection is today, there's like three things that everyone looks at. It's the protection of civilians from physical harm, the provision of humanitarian relief, and then the creation of a safe environment. So when I look at how civilians are protected in Somalia, I look at those three things and I see if those three kind of components are being met. And that's how you kind of evaluate whether or not this mission is successful in protecting people. And then with non-dissertation work, I look a lot at development. And so I have written a lot about women in development, and specifically about microfinance. So how like microfinance initiatives have helped or hindered women's empowerment in different geographical areas, especially in India, because microfinance is really blown up in India. And so I look at that and I'm really interested in stuff like that because I'm a woman of color and these are important issues for people like me. And so the other thing that I did most recently is look at mobile money and a mobile financial institution and transactions in Kenya, where I'm from. And so I wrote a book chapter in an edited volume called Disruptive Technology, Mobile Money, and Financial Mobilization in Africa. And so I looked at a mobile money transfer service, which is an innovative form of branchless banking. And I looked to see how this branchless banking has tried to include those people in the most rural areas of the country or on the fringes of the formal financial system and financial market. So that's so far.
That's fascinating. It's really amazing. So, I'm just curious that what drew you to this topic of interest?
So I'm from Mombasa, Kenya. Mombasa is a small island town in southeast of Kenya on the Indian Ocean. I'm half Arab from Yemen. My mom has Indian roots, ethnic Swahili roots. And so I've always, where if you live like on the coast or on the equator, especially in Africa, you conflict, humanitarian, political, social, security conflict, it becomes your real life, like your every single day life, right? So
Right.
growing up, I remember like Al-Shabaab attacks in my town or in neighborhoods or towns near where I grew up. I remember 2013, the Westgate Mall in Nairobi getting blown up, and people that I know were there. So conflict in that area and crises have, it's not, I'm not far removed from them. The other thing too is with the technology and development things, I lived it. When I go back to Kenya, I use mobile money. That's the only way the major way to purchase things, the major way people are using to bank. And so my research interests and everything that I do from my dissertation to other projects that I take on from one way or another stem from my lived experience. And I feel like only in that way can I do it justice, because then I have a true passion for it. And then I can hopefully, I can tell my story, but also the story of actually what happens in those parts of the world.
Absolutely, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you can just like talk briefly about some of the main contributions of your project.
So I'm gonna talk to you about like my dissertation work specifically. I am a global Souther in pursuing a PhD in the global North. I'm a woman of color pursuing a PhD in a male-dominated field, specifically white male. And so whenever I was reading for my comprehensive exams or any kind of these theories, I find that Africa is often sidelined from many discussions about human security. But then Africa is also a popular case study for misdemeanor on the international stage, right? It's whenever you think of corruption or security or this, it's always the African country that is being used as an example. But then scholars have drawn on African agency, arguing that the region has unique political, economic, cultural, social experiences that contribute to the development of certain theories, or in my case, civilian protection norms. And so I believed it before I even looked into it, but I believed that these global norms of security or human protection, civilian protection, are not just, they're not generated outside and then they're brought into Africa. They're more ingrown based on our own experiences. And so theoretically, my dissertation looks at the development of norms. So how norms emerge, how they change, how they diffuse, how they're adapted, how they're contested. And so I found that most of the work on norms are rooted in the Western experience. But missing in the literature is contributions of African agents and how their work has contributed to the development of these norms. And so my research is striving to highlight African agency from African scholars, from African leaders, from non-state organizations, civil service organizations, everyday people, in their development, how their work has shaped civilian protection norms. And I believe that regional organizations like the African Union have been crucial for the development of civilian protection norms, and African actors and agents continue to shape the development and evolution of global norms. And so I hope that this is the biggest contribution of my dissertation. So everywhere you open in my dissertation, you will find not only an ode to like human rights, Geneva Convention and human rights law, international human rights law, international refugee law, but also what Africans have done to advance these norms, not only in their own context, but also internationally.
Absolutely. I know that I've learned a lot from your research, and I'm pretty sure all our WIIS members will learn so much. I was wondering, being a senior scholar, like, do you have any kind of advice for like women who are working in international security?
I think I can only speak about my own experience as a woman of color, doing a PhD in international security. So like I said, from my own experience, even when I walk into a room, it's mostly white men. And then there's only like people like us, like a little bit, or like a woman. And so I realized that I have lived experiences that other people around me might not have. So I can confidently engage in scholarly conversations, even if I'm not the most senior scholar, even when I was starting out and I didn't know like the terms to use or the theory or whatever. And I said, but my own experience and my own story is important. And yes, there are many people that have spent years just studying this from afar, but I've actually lived there. So what I have to contribute is important. And I find that doing that and being subjective, it doesn't make you less qualified as a scholar. I think it actually elevates the research that you do. I also am a firm believer in storytelling. Where I'm from, the passing of generational knowledge, especially if you're second, third generation Kenyan, for example, myself, and I've never been to India. My grandfather is from Goa. I've never been there. And so if I talk to my aunts, and they will tell me generational knowledge that way. And I use that in my research too. Like when I went on field work, the amount of times I just sat there and listened and absorbed it all and didn't have a notepad or anything like that. And then later on just went and decompressed it all. I find that that's an important thing. Like that's an important thing to do. So whatever you have in your arsenal, whatever you believe is your greatest asset, no matter what it is, it's probably really important in how you're going to share these stories. I find that I can use my platform. I'm very privileged to have this platform as a PhD scholar with all these networks wanting to talk about my work, etc. So I can use my positionality and my platform to tell the stories of the communities that are often neglected or forgotten. And then I can do an important service for them through that work. And then lastly, well, second lastly, women are also women who are currently in international security positions, whether you're a practitioner or you are in academia, we have an obligation to each other. We have obligations to open up spaces, create communities, and find opportunities for one another and for other women. We have the responsibility to each other. So if you see something, a job posting, funding opportunity, fellowship, PhD opportunity, I think that you think will serve another woman, go ahead and pass it along to them. And then I would not be where I am without my huge crew of other women, people that I follow, even people that I don't know in real life and that I just follow on Twitter, all these amazing women of color, scholars. Some of them I met at WIIS actually, and you can reach out to them anytime and they will always respond to you. So just having kind of mentors and supervisors. And then I find that when I first started, I was very shy. I wouldn't ask questions. I would, and then I wouldn't be happy with the answer that I got. And so someone told me that if you aren't happy with the response you're getting, it's because you're not asking the proper question. So I learned to ask very specific questions and pointed questions. And then I also believe that you can't get what you want unless you ask for it and you continuously ask for it. And so I know this is easier said than done in like such a male dominated field, but those like little like wins, if you ask for X, maybe someone will give you it, you know? And so that's one of the kind of piece of advices I would give to other women.
That's amazing. Well, these are really helpful tips, and thank you so much for that. And finally, just wanted to ask you one last question: is that like, what are you looking forward to doing after the pandemic? Since we're
I
all
want to
sort
go
of
see
going through
my
that.
family. I want to go see my parents, my sister. I haven't seen, she's 12. I haven't seen her since 2019. And so I really would want to go back to Kenya and like see everybody and hang out with them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess all of us are sort of going through the same.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nafisa, for your time and talking to us about this. It's great to learn about your research, and I really appreciate the time you've
Thank
given.
you for having me.